We got one person on. Do a mic check while we're waiting. Try to center myself a little better.
You're good.
We're good?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. You might want to turn it down because I can hear it. Yeah, we're a little early. We've got 3 minutes yet. Mm-hmm. Sebring, Florida. Oh, Cindy Keller's here from Arizona. Look at everybody coming in already. Great to hear from you guys. Give everyone else a couple minutes. Hope everyone's staying safe out there. Hope the weather's good for you guys. It's been pretty warm over here. We're going to be coming into fall in Wisconsin, and not a big fan of fall and winter in the Midwest. Good evening, Lars. Is that how you say it, Lars? I hope I said that right. Lars from Massachusetts. Welcome. Is this, Lars, is this your first time on the YouTube Live? Very good. What and do you own a turbo car? And what year is it? I suppose we could, oh, here he came back. I did it. It was a 81 black and gold WS6 T-top. It was probably an SE. See, it sounds like you're talking in past tense that you no longer have the car. The 81 SE is what my car is that I use to test the parts on and race and everything. But I suppose we can probably get started. It's already 7 o'clock. I'm sure more people will be trickling in as we go. Well, I got my notes here. It's been a little while. I was going to kind of go over some stuff first. So, and again, we'll be answering questions too as we go along. Feel free to type any questions that you have in the chat. So let's talk about the last time that I was at the dyno with my car. So an interesting thing happened. I never posted on Facebook or made a YouTube or anything like that. In the middle of July, towards the end of July, the local machine shop had a dyno day coming up, and they had gotten new dyno software, and they had asked, if I would help out with the dyno day. It was for AMC cars on that Thursday, and they asked if I would come over on Wednesday and kind of learn the new software to help out on Thursday. And I was like, sure, no problem. I said, I'll bring my car and we'll just, play with the software and try out the different things, see the new features and whatever. And we'll see how the new software compared to the old software as far as horsepower numbers. And now we could actually read torque with the new software. So I brought my car over there and we strapped it down on the dyno. And it made 255 horsepower to the rear wheels. And granted, the boost might have been maybe a touch higher than the last time, but the last time that I had dynoed it was in January, I believe, December or January. And it made 251 to the rear wheels. So I was like, oh, okay. For more horsepower it showed to the rear. That's pretty comparable to the old software. So, the accuracy was still there. While I had it on there, I was like, maybe I should try something different. Let's make a change, see if the car likes it or not. It was a pretty warm day. When I was looking over the data log through the Holly Sniper, it showed that it only had like 21.5 degrees of timing in it on that pull. So I was like, well, let's add 1.5 degrees of timing and let's see what happens. I put 1.5 degrees in it, bringing it up to 23. Then the car responded with 8 more horsepower to the rear wheels. So it actually went 263 to the rear wheels. I was like, oh, that's a new personal best. Let's try another degree. So I put 24 degrees of timing in it and made another pull. And then it went up another 4 horsepower and it went to 267. At that point, I figured we're probably approaching diminishing returns. I didn't want to push it any further than that and try to add any more timing to it. But it was kind of a neat experience to find that there was 12 more horsepower hiding with just like 2.5 degrees of timing, which was awesome. And really, when you talk to other tuners, you watch a lot of tuning videos and whatever. A lot of the tuners will tell you that their fuel ratio doesn't make that big of a difference with horsepower numbers. I mean, it can. But where the real power is made is in timing. That's the one that has a big effect on horsepower. So that was an interesting experience. It was a nice lesson learned there, and something to kind of keep in mind next time I'm at the dyno, and any other changes that I'm going to make. Obviously, it's gonna be for additional timing is what I'm going to go after. So yeah, with that. I was just itching to put a stall converter in the car, and I ended up getting one custom made, as you saw in the video, and maybe you guys saw the latest video that just came out. Got a custom made 2500 RPM stall converter, and installed that 1 week before going to the Trans Am Nationals. Big difference that it made on the street, and I was super excited to try it. We were heading to the Nats, and they actually had their kind of itinerary, or whatever you want to call it, that was just kind of showing all the events and things that were happening for that weekend. And they showed that Thursday night, the local drag strip in Ohio, which was Killcare Dragway, was going to be open for test and tune on Thursday night from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. And we were changing up how we normally did things at the Nats. We were actually going to go for a longer period of time. So we were actually leaving Thursday night, and we were gonna, or sorry, not Thursday night. We were gonna leave Thursday morning, get there Thursday night, and it looked like I'd be there just about the time that drag racing was gonna open. And I was like, oh, this would be great. Why don't I go down there and the car will be on the trailer. We'll go to the drag strip that night and let's see if we can make a 13-second pass or not. So, 6-hour drive all the way to Fairborn, Ohio. And it was just outside of Dayton. Well, just as we got into Dayton, just got hammered in a downpour. I mean, on the interstate, could not see in front of you. It was pretty bad. In fact, my car, the pinstriping on my car is not factory. Somebody had used a roll of pinstriping to put it on there, and a lot of it's kind of dried up and falling off. But the hard rain actually like took off the pinstriping. It was hanging off the car. Is how strong the storm was. And by the time we got into Fairborn, the track was closed. They pretty much announced that the track was going to be closed because of the rain. It had flooded. So I didn't get a chance to go to the track, in Ohio, and try out the converter, which may have been a better thing anyway, because honestly, I think traction would have been a problem with street tires. So we were at the Nats. So let's get into the Nats a little bit. If you've never been to the Trans Am Nationals, it's definitely something you want to maybe put on your bucket list. It's a really good time. Tons of cars. It's open to all Firebirds, Trans Ams. That the span that they made them was a 67 to 02. They got a swap meet area. It's at the Holiday Inn in the parking lot. A lot of cars show up from all over the place. We've been going there since, we were just looking this up too, since 16, I believe, 16 or 17. And yeah, we've always had a good time. It was hot this time. It was blazing hot, like surface of the sun hot. It was the joke. You'd go out there at 8 a.m. and start setting up the vendor space, and you're already soaked through your shirt, and it's like, oh boy. We had a tent set up. We had shade, plenty of water in the cooler. Went through that pretty quickly. But it's always a good time. Got to meet customers that I've only talked to on the phone, that they came to the show and got to see them and meet them. That was great. There was quite a few turbo cars there this year. Usually every year there's a pretty good turnout for turbo cars. Several pace cars, of course, and then some really unique ones. There's Ken had this burgundy 80, a dark red 80 with red interior and the 4-color hood bird in red, and the 17-inch year one snowflakes in gold, and it was a sharp looking car. It's a color you just don't normally see, so it was pretty nice. And then Friday was really vendor day. Friday is usually vendor day, swap meet day. So we were set up all day Friday, and then Saturday is the show takes place. There's judging going on, things like that. But then right around 3:30, 4 o'clock, people start heading out to Tip City. Tip City is another car show in the downtown area of Tip City. They actually barricade the road. And it's open. It's basically just for the Firebirds again. And it's another show. I think it's like a People's Choice awarded show. But it basically starts at 5 p.m. and goes till about 9. This is the second year that we've done Tip City. And just to show how hot it was, we packed up and left at like 3:30 and got in the car, met up with a group of us with turbo cars, decided to head out there. They usually open the barricades and let the cars come in around 4 o'clock. It fills up really fast. There's only so much parking available downtown. And we headed out that way. Well, I've got a 180-degree thermostat in my car. you're on the interstate for a little bit, but then we took the back road. So, 55 mile an hour was the fastest that you were going at times. And you're going through all these little towns. By the time I got to Tip City, the temp gauge was at 203. And usually my car is not the type to overheat. So yeah, it was pretty blazing hot. I think the heat index was like around 100 degrees. Did not stay there very long. Found some shade, cooled off, got ice cream for dinner. Walked around and looked at all the cars, tried to stay in the shade as much as we could. And about an hour and a half into it, I was pretty much spent. I was, overcooked from the day, and I was like, I'm ready to go home. So Jonathan and I headed back to the hotel, where again the temp gauge was at 206 when we got into the parking lot. So yeah, Sunday it actually had some cloud coverage. It kind of was cool in the morning, and a lot of people came over, talked to some more people asking questions, had my car on display. Had my customer Chris House, who lives in the area, he had his car there. Just got all the goodies on it, and it was a good time. Like I said, got to meet a lot of great people, as always. Looking forward to next year. Maybe we'll get to go to the drag strip again this next year. But definitely something I recommend you guys doing. It's always a good time. They even have karaoke on Friday nights, but I'm not partaking in that, but it's pretty interesting. They have a lot of cool stuff set up. There were seminars that were going on and stuff. I think Herb Adams was there. I think I heard that Herb Adams was there. There were some other panel discussions with some people. Then there's always, the silent auctions and things. The mini nats is always something that's really cool, where people display their Firebird Trans Am toys and collectibles and model kits and built models and stuff. That's always pretty neat. So yeah, definitely something you should try out. Got a few more people that came on. Brian, good to see you there. William, hot as normal for me in Florida. And the black car don't help any. Yeah, it doesn't. Having a T-top car, I actually left them on because I was just so done. I couldn't handle being in the sun anymore. Brian, you should go, man. Make a note for next year. I mean, it'd be great to get even more turbo cars out there. So yeah, that covered the Nats. It was interesting. Then while I was at the Nats, I started thinking about my car, and that, okay, when I get home, we're going to go to our home track, Great Lakes Dragway, in Union Grove, Wisconsin. It's only about 15 minutes from me. I figured better start looking for some tires. Cruising through Facebook Marketplace, ended up finding a set of drag radials that were brand new. I detailed that in the video. Found some rims from somebody else on Facebook Marketplace that would fit the tires and fit the Trans Am. So when we got home, we actually stayed all day on Sunday, which was a first for us, because usually we would try to leave Sunday like at noon or so to make the trek home. But it was always busy on Sundays for me. And I figured this time, let's just hang out till the awards, the whole thing. We'll just stay the night Sunday night, and we'll come home Monday, take our time, come home Monday morning. And that worked out great. So yeah, got home, and the tires happened to be close to where the U-Haul trailer was getting dropped off. So he was kind of around the corner from it. So, hey, we're going to drop off the trailer and let's go look at these tires, and bought them. And later that night after dinner, went and got the rims from the other gentleman. And, next thing you know, I've got tires and I'm ready to go to the track. So, yeah, that's kind of how it happened. And Monday, the track happened to be open for fun racing on Labor Day, which is odd because usually they have some kind of Labor Day spectacular, and they didn't have that this year. So why not go Monday morning and go make some passes? And as it was outlined in the video, it was amazing what that car did. It shocked me. I was not expecting that those time slips. I was just hoping for like a 13.8, maybe even a 13.9. I wish I would have had some more video footage of my reaction to the first time slip. I came back down the return road, and Jonathan's all excited, and he's like, "Yeah, it did." I'm like, "Oh, it broke a 13." And he's like, "Yep, sure did." I'm like, "Well, what did it do?" And he said 1377. I was like, "Whoa, it really went into the 13 there." And I was like, "Wow, okay. Hopefully we can improve on that." So yeah, it's all about being in boost. I tell people this all the time with the 301 turbo engine. A lot of people are always like, "Oh, I can't break the tires loose. Oh, there's no low end torque." No, it's a 7.5 to 1 compression, small displacement V8 that has terrible flowing cylinder heads and intake manifold. Without boost, it is slow, and especially with the 308 gears and a heavy car and a tall tire. I mean, it's the same repetitive thing, but it doesn't make a lot of power, doesn't make a lot of torque without the boost. The boost is where all the power is. That was what I was after. Get it in boost at the starting line, and we're going to do all right, because it does make good power when it's in boost. So doing all that and getting it on, like I said, 5 pounds of boost, left the line, 1377, backed it up with a 1379, let the car cool down because it was kind of getting heat soaked. I'll get into that in a second. Let it cool off, went back out and make one more run. I could have stayed longer for the day, but we had plans in the afternoon, and really I was like, it's doing what it's supposed to do. I'm more than happy with the car. We can go home. We can give it a break. It's done well. But that last pass, that 1366, I knew that pass was gonna be something, because I was holding my foot on the brake, trying to build as much boost as possible on the starting line. I have my water injection and the water injection light. Water injection comes on at 9 pounds of boost. The light will pop on. I was building boost at the starting line, let off the brake. The minute I hammered the gas at the starting line, the light came on, and I was like, "Oh, we're making that much boost. Okay." Yeah. And then at the end of the track, on the shutdown, I found myself having to step on the brakes pretty good to slow the car down. And I was like, "Yeah, this might have been a better pass," which it was. It wasn't a whole lot better, but still, it's basically a mid 13-second car, which is just phenomenal in my mind. I was just over the top, loved it. But getting back to the heat soaking thing. So I have a thermocouple in the intake manifold, in number 1 intake, or 1 and 3 intake runner. And driving the car to the track, driving it around town, depending on where you are on the throttle, it fluctuates. A warm day, like it was, is like 80 degrees out. The intake temps can be anywhere from like 125 if you're kind of on the gas and accelerating a little bit, but not in boost. If you're just cruising, they'll come up to like 150, 155, something like that. I was a little scared because the first pass, I had it turned on. I'm building boost at the line. I take off. I'm going down the track. It's 200 degrees through the intake. And I was like, is the water injection on? Lights on, but that doesn't mean anything. It just means electrically it's working. So I was listening for detonation. I thought for sure I was going to hit detonation at 200-degree intake temps. And I've got it pretty rich on the fuel injection on the EFI. It's running like 11.5 air fuel ratio at wide open throttle at full boost. So I never heard it rattle, never heard detonation. Came back around, saw the time slip. I was like, wow, hey, we got to test the water injection because I don't think it's spraying. Maybe it's clogged. I don't know. Checked it. Nope. Spraying just fine. 200 degrees. And maybe because it's hot out, maybe because when I drove it to the track, the big cast iron intake manifold and everything just got heat soaked, and there was nothing I could do about it. But it didn't care. It still ran great. In my mind, that is a key area that I'm going to focus on next, because if I can get them intake temps down, I think it's got more in it. I think also, like, come fall, you get like a good 50, 60 degree day, it's probably going to do pretty well. Yeah, so that's where that was at. Drove the car home then, and it's fun. It's fun to drive on the street. It's still amazing to me how it feels on the street. But let's take a look at some questions and possible comments that we got going on here. We got a few more people filing in. Tom Cromwell. Hey, Joe, set up the modified HEI and black box ECU for me years back. Yes, I remember, Tom. Car was off the road for a few years, but it's back on the road. I wanted to let you know the setup works great. Thank you. All right, Tom, you're welcome. Let me talk about that. That's a pretty cool thing that Tom's got going on there. Tom, I believe, has a 81 that was computer controlled, and I sold him it's called the Black Box. It's CB Performance out in California makes this, like, it's a programmable ignition box similar to an MSD, but it's way more affordable. And I modified the distributor to run that black box, and then they have their software and everything to dial in timing, and you can make your own timing curve out of it. And it's got quite the resolution. I mean, the cells between engine load and RPM there's a lot of cells that you can fill in. And the thing will read up to, it's something ridiculous. It was like 5 bar or something like that. It was like, I don't know, like 60 PSI or something it'll go up to. I thought it was ridiculous, but no, it's actually a pretty neat thing. It works out really well. You get to keep the HEI and you get to program your own timing curve in it. It's a pretty neat piece. If you guys are ever interested in something like that and want more information, feel free to send me an email or give me a call and I'll tell you about it. And Michelle Colburn is on, or Shelly's on, and she actually, my sister-in-law, she was at the Nats with us. She was selling Lip Sense. It was a brand of lipstick that she sells. Brian O'Neill, you think you saw a wheelie? What, somebody on a bicycle in the pits? It wasn't from my car. Pontiac Matt just tuned in. Joe, great job on breaking well into the 13s. What PSI were you running? That was about, I think it peaked around 14. So when I'm data logging with the Holly Sniper, I don't get a smooth boost line. My boost line is like really jumpy. It's like on a Richter scale. And I think it's because of my boost controller being a spring-loaded check valve. So I think it's bouncing the check valve. So you're getting like this bouncing boost. The other thought I had too was maybe the valve springs might be a little weak in the engine, and maybe I'm just getting some kind of weird resonance. I'm not sure. But it was bouncing somewhere between 12 and high 13s, and once in a while it touched 14. So it was in that range. It's kind of hard to see. Like I said, at the higher boost, it starts to flutter a little bit. But no, I'm not trying to cram it with 19 pounds of boost or anything. Van Boss, how much does the car weigh, or have you said it before I got here? No, I did not. The car, that's a good question. So the first turbo car that I had bought that ran and drove was an 80 pace car, and I was testing my parts on it and doing all this dyno work. It's actually the one that's on the homepage of my website on the dyno. I took it to a truck stop here in Kenosha that had a CAT scale, and I had it weighed without me in it, and they said 3,600 pounds. And that's the number that I always use at the dyno, trying to keep consistency. Now, I don't know how accurate the scale is at a lower number. So in other words, is it plus or minus 50 pounds? Because you got to figure semi trucks are going on here, so they're measuring something a lot heavier. So it came up 3,600 pounds. You know, put a 180 pound driver in it, and you got a 3,780 weight, almost 4,000 pounds. But so I would say, I think Lee, my friend Lee, or another turbo owner, he's been keeping track on a spreadsheet of like any dyno numbers, time slips from all turbo cars, turbo owners. And he's been using 3775 as the weight to kind of calculate rear wheel horsepower based on ET and mile per hour. And man, I gotta say, his calculations, he's claiming my car is making 285 to 295 to the rear wheel based on the mile an hour or the ET. I was like, wow, it's hard to believe that it's actually somewhere around 300 horse to the rear wheels. Like I said, I measure it at 267 on the chassis dyno here in town. Brian, that's a legit muscle car. Yeah, I'd like to think so. You know, it's so funny. Driving the car, like, give me a second. So when we went out to Tip City, I was the middle car. There's three of us that traveled together, and we had pulled over to wait for some other people to catch up. And I went to tell Ken, that was behind me with the burgundy one, that, hey, we're just waiting for some people to catch up. And a minute I walk up to his car, he goes, "Oh my God, does your car whistle? It is so loud." And I was like, yeah, it does. It does whistle pretty loud. I mean, it sounds like a diesel truck when you take off with it. It's pretty cool. I gotta say, I find myself laying into it, you know, just to make noise. But it really throws people off because they're like, oh, he turbocharged an LS in that car. No, it's the 301. You can actually hear it in the video when it's at the starting line, and you can hear it whistling. It's pretty neat though. William, you have shut-off valve for the plenum coolant. No, I do not. This is why. And people have heard me mention this from time to time before. You have the coolant hose, and he's talking about the coolant hose that's going from the thermostat, or next to the thermostat housing. It's going over to the plenum, or basically the piece that the carburetor is sitting on. That's the plenum, we call it. So you have this larger hose there, and then you have a skinny 3/8 hose as a return coming out the back going to the heater hoses. A lot of people are like, oh, disconnect that hose. It'll make the plenum cooler and you'll have cooler air going into the turbo. True. Yeah, you kind of do. The problem that I have, and I tell people this story all the time, I have my customer, Henry Hoffman, he's got the car that ran on E85. Well, still does run on E85. And had just the hardest problem, a problem I couldn't figure out, where it would sit there and idle, and air fuel ratio is kind of where I want it, maybe bouncing around a little bit. And the minute I would touch the throttle, just go stupid rich, black smoke, chugging the engine, misfiring. It'd finally clear itself out, and then it would run fine, and it would rev up. Couldn't figure it out. I was all over that EFI, data logging, what's going on with the injectors. I thought for sure the injectors were just dumping massive amounts of fuel. Come to find out, that hose was not connected to his plenum, and there was no heat in the plenum. And when you'd open the throttle blades with the engine off, you saw fuel puddled in the bottom. And the minute you would touch the throttle when it was running, the rush of air would come through, and it would just suck it right down the turbo and the engine, and it would just run stupid rich. So I always run the hose. I leave the plenum coolant hose on there. Now, it's only there to warm up. I put the coolant hose on his car, and it immediately changed the way it idled. It ran so much better, no more over-rich condition, ran great. The way the plenum coolant hose works is you have the special thermostat in the 301 turbo. And here's a critical thing. The intake manifold, if you were to take the thermostat out and you look down into the hole for the thermostat, the crossover of the intake manifold, it looks like there's a freeze plug in there with a small hole drilled in the middle of it. That's critical because that's the bottom half of that thermostat. That's controlling the coolant flow to the plenum. So when the thermostat is open, take that back. When the thermostat is closed, meaning the engine's cold, that part of the thermostat is allowing coolant to go to the plenum. It's flowing through that hose when the thermostat is closed. So during your warm-up cycle, it's flowing coolant because that coolant's coming straight off the cylinder head. So it's warming up rather quickly. And then it's going to the plenum, and it's getting that big chunk of aluminum warmed up. Once it reaches operating temperature, which normally was 195 degree, I like to run 180 degree thermostat would open and it would close off that passage. So once the thermostat's open and the engine's at the operating temperature, there's no longer coolant flowing into that plenum. It's cut off. So Yeah, to me it's critical. I'm in the Midwest. It's, we get cold days. I'd like to drive my car when it's 50 degrees outside, 40 degrees outside. Heck, if there's no snow on the ground and it's above freezing, I might drive it. So I like to use it. Being in Florida, being in Texas, yeah, you guys could probably get away without it. Is there a gain there? I'm thinking it's marginal. I've had people tell me, well, what about cooling it off? What if you ran cold water through it? I did think of that. I thought, man, that'd be a great thing. But then after having this problem with fuel puddling in the bottom, like, yeah, I don't know if I'd want to make that thing cold. But great question. Great question. Let's see. Grant Smith. I'm just going to check to make sure I did not pass up anybody, because you guys are the ones that make this thing. Otherwise, I'm just a rambling idiot on here talking about my day. So let's see. Yeah, shut up valve for the plan. Okay, Tom, 80 pace car, but someone swapped in a non-turbo HEI. Okay, Tom does have an 80. So you're using the black box on a conventional weights and springs type of distributor. Pontiac Matt, what was max boost you were running when you ran the 13.66? It was 14. I think I tried bringing it up to get it up closer to 15, but I didn't turn it up enough, but I wasn't too concerned with it. I was like, we'll leave it at 14. Grant Smith, hi Joe, I have an 81 pace car. I want to install a boost gauge. A while ago, you explained the easiest way to install. Could you run through that again, as it seems pretty easy? Melbourne, Australia. Sure. So there's a couple. Let me get into, I'm assuming you're more concerned with where to hook up the boost gauge to get an accurate reading versus where to physically place the gauge. But we'll get into both. Where you want to hook up. So you want to hook up somewhere downstream of the turbo. So let me tell you where you can't hook it up. Don't hook up anywhere on the carburetor. There's no boost on the carburetor at all. There's no pressure in there. There's nothing going on. You're never going to see boost if you try to tee into any of the vacuum hose connections on the carburetor itself. You basically have to be after the compressor housing. Now, there is a fitting on the compressor housing at the foot of the compressor. I call it the foot. It's where the 3 bolts are that bolted to the intake manifold. There is a little square hose connection there. And that hose connection is what's going to your wastegate actuator. So anywhere in that line for the wastegate actuator, usually it's a steel line if you still have the original one, you can hook up the T-in for your gauge. You're going to read vacuum and boost there. The only other place that there's actually a port for it would be where it's the little block that sits on the number 1 and 3 intake runner right behind the alternator. On an 80, your power enrichment valve is mounted to it, and especially if you have boost lights, your boost light pressure switches are also on it. If you could tap into that somehow, if you don't have boost lights and there's plugs in there, take one of the plugs out, put a hose bar fitting in it, or like I said, tee in at the wastegate. That's the best place to do it. You 81 guys that have computer controlled feedback carb, the whole computer command control, CCC stuff, you have a map sensor on the fender, and you have that long hose, 1/4-inch hose that goes from the wastegate actuator all the way around the booster, down the fender, and goes to the map sensor. You can tee into that hose for your gauge, because that's exactly what it is. Your map sensor is your boost gauge, but it's just converting it to a voltage so that the ECM can read it. But yeah, you guys have it a little bit easier because you can just tee into that hose. If you end up with one of my manual boost controllers, it's a little bit different, because if you are gonna tee in, we're in that same line going to the wastegate and the manual boost controller is there, you have to tee in underneath the manual boost controller. It's all outlined in the instructions, so don't worry about it. Because if you tee in above it, that's a delayed signal. You're not going to see boost there. But as far as where to mount the gauge, I have my gauge that I'll convert your clock to a vacuum boost gauge. Some of you guys saw it in the last video, this last one for being at the drag strip. I do have that I offer. Some guys have taken out the AC vent because a 2 1/8 gauge fits perfect in the AC vent. And then some other people like to find another place to mount it. I suppose you could even do a pillar gauge if you wanted to. One of the videos with Rocky where I was measuring the boost and setting up like the water injection and stuff, I actually just slipped it into the gauge panel, the fascia, where the lip is on the top where the bolts go. I just kind of tucked it in there and let it sit in there. Kind of covers up the far driver side vent, but you can put it wherever you want, really. But thank you for the question. Let's see, what else? William, I was curious if running ice water through the plenum for the track, if there would be any performance gains. As I had mentioned, I think it would start puddling the fuel. You got to have some heat in there to make the fuel evaporate. You don't want the fuel going in as a liquid. Okay, Pontiac Matt. Oh, cool, 14 pounds. Yep. 81 TA weighs 3750. Okay, close enough. Brian, my car rattles my brain after a while. Is it too loud for you, Brian? RYFI24 likes the spool up sound. I like it a lot too. Pontiac Matt, your car and mine are 0.3 apart in a quarter mile. I ran a best of 13.3 at 102, and I have you by 160 cubic inches. Let's see, 301 plus 160. Oh, Pontiac Matt's got a 461 stroker. That's a cool engine, though. Very cool. Matt, were you getting, what's your 60-foot time? Do you know on that 13.3 pass? I'm assuming you probably got tire spin like crazy, is my guess. I mean, that 461's got to be making a ton of torque. Same gear ratio, turbo 350. Oh, 3,000 stall. Oh, you got some drag radials on it. Same drag radials. Okay. Wow, 3,000 stall. Wow, okay. Nice. You're still running the 308s though. Wow. That's you're 102 mile an hour. You're making some more power than me. But still that's pretty cool that I kind of rank up there with a 461. But I'd be curious what your 60-foot times were with it. What else? Pontiac Man, I'm running stock 6x8 heads. Need to get some Edelbrock heads to stay ahead of you. I don't know, 6x8s. I mean, it's still a 211 intake valve and everything. I'd like to put boost on your 461 and see what happens. Tom, oh, just to clear up, the car is at 80. And it has a locked out 81 distributor that I rewired for the black box. It did have a screwed up non-turbo HEI, which was causing detonation under any boost. Yeah, that kind of happens. So for some of the new guys and everything out there, and I don't mind repeating myself and putting the information out there, you end up, so what ends up happening is 80 or 81. Let's take 80 for instance. 80 turbo car. It's just a stock HEI distributor, but it has a 5-pin ignition module because of the electronic spark control, that whole detonation sensor thing. And it throws people off. It's got this separate 4-pin connector, square 4-pin connector, and you get the no spark condition. And your regular everyday mechanic that's familiar with an HEI that has no spark is, oh, ignition module is bad. Okay, put an ignition module in it. Oh, wow, it still don't start. Maybe it's a coil. Nope, still won't start. Well, maybe it's a mag pickup. Nope, still won't start. Oh, screw it, take the distributor out. We'll just put a different HEI in it. So they end up putting a conventional HEI in it. Oh, look, it starts, because they didn't know that the spark control box that's inside the center console is what's keeping it from having spark, because the box went bad. The box is kind of in series with the ignition, and if it's unplugged or it's not there or whatever, it won't start. So now they changed out the distributor. Oh, I got this one out of a 77 400 that came out of, my grandmother's Catalina. Well, that's all great. It fits and it hooks up and it starts and it runs. Then you might even have a couple guys that, oh, wow, 8 degrees of base timing. That's just too low. You got to run like 14. So they put 14 degrees of timing in it, and they find out that the Catalina had like, 34 degrees total timing on that distributor. Maybe the weights in the springs swung who knows how many degrees, during centrifugal advance. And next thing you know, this thing's got a ton of timing in it. Feels great, taking off from stoplights and everything. But the minute you try to put it into boost, it's just going to rattle. It's going to rattle the pistons and, possibly blow a head gasket, crack a piston, something. It's going to have problems. And then, of course, we have these things, that's all they do is detonate. They run like garbage, blah, blah, blah. So timing is very critical on these cars. Usually the 81 version goes like, oh, you got to get rid of all that computerized crap on there. And that's what's, that's what's holding back the car. Put a normal distributor in it, put a normal quadrajet on it, it'll run great. No, it kind of doesn't. Not that I'm saying the computer stuff is the best performing stuff for, making more horsepower. It's just that it's already set up the proper way to make sure it doesn't detonate. So yeah, be careful out there. If you're new and you're looking to buy your first turbo car, these are the things you need to check. Does it have the correct distributor in it? Does it have the correct carburetor on it? Those are the two things I go for right away. The third one, does it have a correct turbo block in it? Because a lot of times these things blew up. The guy that put the 400 distributor in it, he rattled it to death. He broke a piston, did something, yanked it out, got a junkyard 78 301 two barrel, put all the turbo stuff on it, threw it back in the car. That one's not as strong as the turbo block. So those are the three things I usually go for when I'm looking at a car. Does it have all that stuff? Probably went way beyond the question that was asked. Thank you, Pontiac Matt. Your 301 turbo rocks. I agree. I like it. It's a lot of fun. Jay Mason. Hey, Joe, I have an 80 pace car. I bought the Holley Super Sniper. Wanted to know how you got the Sniper to control timing with the factory HEI. Hey, Jay. So you have an 80. So there's some wiring involved, and then you're going to have to lock that distributor out if you want to run it. I tell you what, when you can, give me a call, and I will kind of walk you through what I do with them. I have a certain way that I wire them to try to keep things a little bit neater and keep things a little more factory looking. The Super Sniper is pretty nice. There's more things that you can do with a Super Sniper than with the regular one. You have a few more options with the Super Sniper, but yeah, I can help you out with that. We got text messages coming in too. Okay, nothing related. Grant Smith, thanks, mate. RYFI 24. Setting up my boost light kit on my 80 turbo, same as Rocky, this week. Got from you. May do the water system later. Okay, cool. Good luck with that. Let me know if you have any questions about it or if you need any help. Oh, Pontiac Matt, 1:9:60 foot time. We're pretty close. I did a 2:06 on mine. So yeah. Man, I'd love to be under 2 seconds, 60 foot. I think that'd be phenomenal. William, at the line, could you hold tires with brake, or did it break loose? No, it did not. Not at the track. Actually, this is the amazing thing. If you actually watch the video and the first pass that I make, I'm trying to do a burnout with the car in the water. Now, normally I've never had a problem in the water doing one, but the rear disc brakes just will not. It's so hard to overcome the rear discs. Like, you're trying to power through the clamping force of the rear disc brakes. And, at first I'm like trying to do this burnout in the water, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it won't even turn the tires. What is going on? And finally it overcomes the brakes. And, once you get it into boost and everything during the burnout, it just goes insane. I mean, I actually shift second gear in my burnout because I like to get more wheel speed then. And what was so funny was, okay, finally the tires are turning, boost comes on, the RPM comes flying up, tires are spinning, shift second gear, we're still under boost, and the thing's going crazy. And it's like, okay, I let off the brake, let the tires, I'm still on the gas hard, let off the brake, roll out of the water, figuring this is the part where the heated up drag radials are going to stick and they're going to grab. And it never happened. It just spun all the way up to the starting line. I was like, oh man, this is going to be bad. I was like, these things are not going to hook up. But they did. And I was like, really? It made that much power that I could keep them spinning? That's just so odd. That or maybe there was still water in the tread. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, those tires, I had 22 PSI in them. So they were kind of flattening out a little bit. And they worked out well. I've run that similar tire on my 01 Mustang, and they worked out really well. I ended up switching the Mustang to Mickey Thompson ET Streets, which those are really soft on the sidewall. But yeah, I mean, it was a great tire, and I kind of like the look of the Krager Soft 8 on the car. I was like, maybe I should get 2 more for the front. So yeah, Pontiac Matt's got a 308 gear in the rear end, which, so let's talk about gear for a little bit. Just 308 gears in it. I've got a 342 rear end for the car. I've got a 204R transmission for it too, but I wanted to see how far I could go with, stock turbo 350 and stock rear gears. And I mean, stock turbo 350, it's got a shift kit in it. Now it's got a stall converter in it. So the 275/50, like I mentioned in the video, is 1 inch shorter. Not a big deal. It's just 1 inch. It's not like I'm running something super short, which I got a funny story about that. And I think I already touched on it once in one of the other lives. So I didn't think nothing of it. I was like, okay, 1 inch shorter. I'm probably not going to see that much of a difference. Going through the shifting at 5,000 RPM, I actually went across the finish line in third gear at 5,000 RPM. I was like, oh man, with 342s, I probably would have ran out of gear. It probably would have been much higher in the RPM, or I would have been beyond the 5,000 before I got to the finish line. So now I'm second guessing whether or not I want to change the rear gears. Maybe I'll just put the 204R in it at some point, which has a lower first gear, so I can get out of the hole, come off the line a lot quicker. And then I'll have overdrive for highway driving because, it's up there. I mean, you try to do 70, we got 70 mile an hour speed limits around here. You try to do 70 miles an hour in that thing, it's like 2,800 RPM. So it's a little up there. I don't like to take any long trips at that kind of speed. But yeah, so funny story about the tire thing. I think I talked about this in the past, that I was like, oh, I'm going to, before I put the converter in it, I'm going to change the rear tire size like I used to do on my Fox body Mustangs and run really short tires to make it act like it has more gear in the rear end. Well, I had bought these ridiculous looking 15 by 6 inch Chevrolet Corvette Rally style wheel. And they must have been on the front of like a rat rod or something, because they were bright red, but they had 185 65 15s on there. I mean, there was like short sidewall, very, very short tire. I think it ended up 24 inches tall. And doing the calculation, it's like, there's my 342 gear. It's like having 342s in it, but it looked ridiculous on the car. And I was like, I don't care. I just want to prove out a theory. Does more gear help the car or not? So I was at the track. I recorded some of this, but I never made a video of it then. I was at the track. I went on the street tires. I think that's when I did like a 14.2.3 somewhere in there. I don't know if that was the 14.2 that night or if it was 14.3, something like that. And I switched out to those little dinky tires, went in a burnout box, did a burnout, went up to the line, trying to build boost with the stock torque converter, holding the brake. Then on that particular run with those short little street tires, it did start to spin the tires on the line. I was actually driving through the rear calipers, the rear brakes. And I was like, oh man, I'm starting to spin at the starting line. This is not good. Light turned green, just immediately spun the tires. Okay, I pedaled it. I let off and I got right back in it. And the minute the boost came on, it lit up the tires again. I'm like, yeah, we'll just abort this run. There's no point in staying in it. And it was pretty much a failed effort at that point. I was like, take these ridiculous things off. They went back on Facebook Marketplace and sold them for what I paid for them. I was like, I tried. Okay, Jay Mason, give me a call next week. Also want to know how many triple C's is the dish on CCs, sorry. Okay. How many CCs is the dish on factory pistons? Trying to figure out the quench distance between the head and piston for head gasket thickness. Good question. I've never measured. You can find that information. If you look up the Keith Black replacement turbo piston, it will tell you how many cc dish that piston has, which I think they matched it to the factory. I want to say it's 13 cc's, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. And then you got to measure deck height, or like how far what the compression height is. I think the piston's actually in the hole a little bit. It's not zero decked from the factory or anything. And then the only head gasket for it is the Felpro one. But if you're the person I'm thinking of, I think you have some other head gasket you're using. Pontiac Matt, you really got to heat those Nito drag radials up to get them to stick at the track. I usually spin about 3-4 feet, then hook and go, but I also have 500 foot-pounds of flywheel torque. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, mine were not spinning at all. In the video, you might hear tire squealing. That's the LS1 car that I'm racing. So speaking of the LS1 car, that black Firebird is my brother-in-law, Greg. We went out to the track together. That is a 2001 Firehawk, SLP Firehawk formula, 6-speed manual, SLP hood, SLP exhaust, got 17-inch wheels. It's basically stock. Still has cats, still has manifolds. It just has SLP exhaust system from SLP. That's how the car came. He was practicing launching without spinning the tires too bad. He's just running on street tires, but it was funny because we were running pretty much identical times. That first pass, when I went 1377, he left on the green light. I stayed and just sat there building more boost. But he went 1373, I went 1377. And I thought that was pretty amazing that my car keeps up with a stock LS1 Firebird, 4th gen. Oh, let's see. Joe, watch out for watch out your spiders with them sticky tires. Heavy cars, 10 bolts aren't very forgiving. Yeah, it's better than a 7.5 inch. That's for sure. The 8.5 that's under the car, usually they're better. I mean, heck, if you're going by ring gear diameter, the GM 8.5 and the 2nd gens versus, I mean, that's pretty close to the 8.8 diameter that's in like a Fox or any of the 5-liter Mustangs. I think the 8.5, even it'll live longer. The bad ones are the 7.5s that came in like the 3rd and 4th gen cars. Them things will spit out spider gears and break pinion shafts, and they're kind of dinky. What rear street tires? 255, 60, 15. I can't get any traction. Oh, with street tires, you can't. Yeah, I could imagine you can't get any traction with street tires on your 461. Oh, so you're running drag radials all the time. Track elevation, good question. We're close to sea level. You know what? Now you got me curious. If you guys can just give me 1 second. See if it'll show it. Yeah, probably somewhere. Oh, 774 feet. 774 feet above sea level. There's a positive number. That's what Union Grove is. I bet I surprised the LS1 Firehawk. So like I was saying, it was my brother-in-law that was driving the Firehawk. So the next time around, we raced each other the whole all three passes. I was racing him, and I says next time we make a run here, I says wait for me to leave. I said because I'm just going to sit there when the green light's on. I'm just going to sit there and build as much boost as I can or whatever. I said the minute you see me leave, then you go. And so it made it a little bit closer, but man, I got a hole shot on him when that would happen. I was out on him, and it was funny because he was trapping 102, 103 mile an hour. So the car is technically faster. He just doesn't have the sticky tire to get it to launch and get that 60 foot down. What else we got? Jay Mason, it's 024 in the hole. Wanting to get Cometic MLS gaskets, total Quench with factory head gaskets is 056. So I was trying to get it down to 045 with the 028 head gasket. Okay. Pontiac Matt, I'm at Atlanta Dragway. We were 1,100 feet above sea level. We're close. We're a little close. Oh, that's pretty cool. Wow, 1 hour exactly. What other questions you guys got? I'm out of topic at the... Well, I shouldn't say I'm out of topic yet. Oh, good question here, Jay. So with the 252H cam, 165 rocker arms, did you run factory push rods or did you have to get a different length push rod? Different cam and rocker changes the valve train geometry. I did not change the push rod length. I left it the same. There's not a whole lot more. Maybe it could be off a little bit. I haven't experienced any problems. It looked good, so I just left it. The valve train is adjustable now rather than torqued down like how the factory was. So I adjust it like a Chevy and put locking style rocker nuts on it. Are you going to try and run more boost? What are your cam specs? My cam specs right now is, like we were saying, it's the Comp Cam 252H cam. It's a single pattern cam. You'd have to look it up, whatever the 252H is. I want to say it's 214 at 50 on the duration, and then it's 425 lift, intake and exhaust on the lift side. It's on a 110 lobe separation angle, which I'm not a big fan of, but I stabbed it in there because that's what I've been selling everybody else and putting in for basically a stock upgrade cam. I really want to try a roller cam and do something with a wider lobe separation angle because of the fuel injection. The wider lobe separation angle to give me a stronger vacuum signal at idle, and also to kind of spread out the torque curve a little bit more. But I don't know if I want to change the cam just yet. It's a lot of work, and the car's doing well right now. Let's just keep going. What was the other thing that you had asked? Are you trying to run more boost? So here's the next plan of attack. I'm sure everybody's probably wondering, what's the next step? Next step for me, E85. Now, let's talk about E85 for a second. Been kind of doing some research, try to understand. I understand how it works. I understand how everybody does it and how to make it work. I've got a customer that already uses E85 in his 301 turbo. My thing was like, okay, what can I expect as far as gains? I know it runs phenomenal in boosted applications. You're gaining the high octane like race fuel, but you're also gaining all these cooling properties with the alcohol, and it's like a win-win, and it's cheap. I see all the benefits of that, but I'm like, really, realistically, how much more power could I possibly gain? I've had at least 3 different people tell me, E85, you're going to be in the 12s. I find that hard to believe. I'm not as much as I want to get there. Trust me, I would love to get there. I'm always, the one that's like, yeah, you sure? Yeah, I don't know if it's going to go that fast. It seems like a lot of people, videos that I've been watching with these tuner guys, and people doing comparisons. Here it is on the dyno doing pump gas. Here it is on the dyno. We switched to E85. It seems on average it's like 30 to 40 more horsepower to the wheels. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, can you imagine my car with 30 to 40 more horsepower to the rear wheels? I'm like, that'd be insane. Like I said, I was like, no, it ain't going to do that. It can't do that. I don't know. Maybe it could. 12.9 would be phenomenal with that. I mean, that would be amazing if it did a 12.9. I'm sure there is a gain with E85. Even if it went 13.2, I'd be happy. So yeah, that's kind of the next step for it. Now, as getting back to, are you going to run more boost? You could. I could try to go for 16, 17, maybe. I don't know if I want to do that just yet. I kind of want to see where the E85 takes me on 14 pounds. Heck, maybe I'll start out at 12 and just see what happens. Because it seems the consensus for E85 is, yeah, you can run more boost, but you can actually make more power by running more timing. And I was already seeing on the dyno that it loved timing. So where's the gain going to come from? Do I put E85 in it, keep the 14 pounds, and try to shoot for 26 degrees, 28 degrees of timing? 30? I don't know. When's it going to stop making power? And leave the boost alone? Or do I optimize at 14 pounds of boost and optimize the timing, and then maybe try 15, 16 pounds of boost? At some point, I think I'm going to reach the limit of the stock head bolts, and they're going to lift the head. And I don't want to get there. Not yet. I don't want to push it that far. Oh, what else we got? Pontiac Matt. My brother runs E85 in his 76 TA with an 80 millimeter turbo LS 6 liter. He loves E85. Everybody I talk to, E85 is the way to go. I've got a friend of mine. He was actually at the track that day when we were racing, who has a 67 Camaro, 67 Camaro, I believe. The car is insane. Small block Chevy in it. I don't even know the specs of it. All I know is that he's running a lot of nitrous, and he's on E85, and it's not boosted. It's naturally aspirated, except for the nitrous, of course. He's actually running drag week next week. So good luck to him. Kevin, hope you do well. But yeah, I mean, he's got 13-to-1 compression in that small block Chevy, and he's running E85. And he's like, it runs great. Oh, Brooke Pitt. Hey, you're finally here. You never missed one of these, Brooke. I don't think you ever have. Are you thinking you would be able to turn off water injection with E85? Great question. Yes, I know I will. So Henry Hoffman's car that runs E85, I had put the thermocouple, the temperature probe, in his intake manifold on that car while I was on the dyno, and it was hilarious. On pump gas, you would see the temps go up as the boost came on. Water injection kind of stabilized it. The water injection would kick on, and then they would just kind of hold. Took off the water injection, or just disconnected the water injection, switched over E85, holding the throttle at 3,000 RPM, getting ready to make a hit. You know, usually the temps would stabilize around like 125 degrees. You'd hammer down on it. It'd go, fuel enrichment would come in, and then it would just plummet right down, and it went to like 95 degrees or something like that on the intake temp. I was like, it's making boost, and the intake temps are going down. This is just weird. But yeah, definitely can turn off the water injection. That's one of the reasons also that I'd like to use it. Tom, corn juice aside, and back to trans, what are your thoughts on ideal trans stall gear setup? The idea of an overdrive seems tempting, but do you think there is really any need to move on from the Turbo 350? Depends on your goals. I'm thinking if you're planning on taking the car on longer trips, highway driving, you're gonna cruise it, but you're gonna be taking it some places and whatever. Overdrive might be something you want to do. There's benefits to it. The 204R is my choice for these cars. People talk about the 700R4. I know the 700's got more support. I don't like the 700. I mean, first off, it's a Chevy-only bolt pattern. It's going to require an adapter. I don't like the gear spacing on a 700. It's got like a 306 first gear, and then it's like a canyon mile between first and second. So the RPMs drop considerably. The overdrive's not as deep in the 700. You got to shorten the drive shaft for the 700 because it's longer. The 200 to me is the ideal trans for these cars. Better gear spacing, 274 first gear. It's a little bit lower than the Turbo 350, but the gear spacing is great. It bolts right in. Turbo 350 drive shaft hooks up to it. Just got to change the cross member. I use the Summit Racing cross member. But like I said, for cruising and stuff, I would recommend an overdrive. I'm hesitant to put it in my car because I really don't drive the car far distances on the highway. So for me, the Turbo 350 works just fine. Turbo 350 is a proven trans. I mean, people use them all the time in racing applications or whatever. It's a great transmission, and it does what it's supposed to do. And it's durable and everything, and they can be built up. They've been around for a long time, but it all depends on your goals and what you want to do with the car and how you plan on driving it. Pontiac Matt, my brother he dynoed at 938 rear wheel horsepower. It's on my channel. Send me a link. That is cool. I want to check that out. It's funny you mentioned that, 6-liter LS turbo. Tomorrow, so I do some tuning other than I do the Phytech stuff, the Holly Sniper stuff, but I also have HP tuners and I do some tuning on some of the LS stuff. And I've got a customer that has a 92 Camaro that is LS swapped. I'm pretty sure, I think it is a 6-liter. I'd have to ask him again, but it's twin turbo. Beautiful setup, just all done up. Got a 9-inch rear. No, it's got an 8.8 in the rear. He got rid of the 7.5. I think it's got an 8.8 or a 9-inch in the rear. But basically, he just wants a burnout machine. It's a great looking car. It's not a pile of nothing. But yeah, I know. I see the time. My wife is saying, you've been on for a while. But I'm going to be tuning his car tomorrow, and I think we're just street tuning it just to get it going. But that'll probably be the first big horsepower LS car that I get to tune. Most of the time it's been people that do headers in the intake and want their car tuned. He's only 4 seconds faster than me. Only 4, huh? Oh, so yeah, I'm being told that my time is up, apparently. Just checking things over. Make sure there's no text messages or anything. Nope. So yeah. Well, hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll just have to see, next steps. I'm ready to go E85 as soon as this tank is drained down, use up whatever 93 is left in the tank right now. I'm ready to go E85 and start tuning on E85, and let's see what happens. We'll get it. I'm sure there'll be video of it. We'll have it on the dyno. We'll be seeing the improvements with E85. We'll be optimizing the timing, all that good stuff. So excellent. Well, you guys have a good weekend. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for all the questions. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. So take care.